Hello and back again, guys. We're having a demo of how does the co-op looks like in Portal 2. As you can see the first one and the second one in the shadows. First one, the orange one, is most likely to be the client, because in some videos you actually see him being in those cameras. You just see him come up first because he looks. See that guy, he's the host most likely, because he always does that. Okay, come to this building. In demos, they actually tell you what to do. And something that I found really weird is that you can see those two, yeah? And what the hell is that? It's a flying turret. And I thought, what? How is that turret flying? That is impossible. That's what I spotted actually. And the second time I was using the demo. This one, why is that turret flying? Anyway, I don't understand. Why would they make an orange one and a blue one? Why would they change their colors? They could be like brothers. Thin one and a fat one. So yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. One time I tried to connect with my friend in a co-op mode and it doesn't work, which is I was very ashamed in that. Why doesn't it work? I mean, it works for other people. Then I went on YouTube seeing how the other people do, and they in the description I found this thing saying crack. So I just clicked on it, downloaded it, and it still didn't work. And I thought, well, screw this co-op. Oh, it's loading. There we go.
Вы заметили, что я не осталась до конца последнего испытания?
In our first implementation, gestures were automatically selected based on the player's context. For example, you might do a special gesture when standing on a floor button. Players became bored of seeing these gestures so quickly that they stopped using them before discovering any of the special context. Because of this, we decided to give players control of gestures as a way to express themselves. But when shown a full set from the start, they were overwhelmed by all the choices. By awarding gestures as the game progresses, we allow players to familiarize themselves with each gesture in turn. Leaving visible empty slots in the gesture wheel lets players anticipate that they'll be rewarded with cool new gestures as they progress. The gesture wheel provides quick access so that players can feel comfortable tossing a gesture during downtime, letting them pick the perfect moment to share a high five.
We have a taunt where one robot steals the other's core. When implemented, it was the only taunt that required one person to initiate. Because of this, we were afraid it would be used for griefing. We were in the process of rethinking our approach when early playtesters rated this as their favorite taunt. It was also the most used team taunt because it only required one player to initiate, and it was easier to use than the others. We ended up changing all of the other team taunt to emulate the way the works.
Again, as you can see, there was a phone on him, which was very weird.
Airlocks were introduced mainly as a way to allow players to focus on individual puzzles. In some of our early investigations, areas contained puzzles that were meant to be solved as a group, as well as others that were for individual solution. But we found that if players could move freely between them, it would be logically that the individual puzzles would puzzle one big puzzle. This had bad results. For clarity, we created airlock-like spawn rooms that act as checkpoints between puzzles. Once both players entered the airlock, we lock off act-off.
This one's weird because it has something to do with Left 4 Dead.
In Left 4 Dead 2, we authored simple, fogged, black versions of the world as monolithic models to avoid the CPU overhead of rendering the world again for water reflections. This worked well for the Left 4 Dead 2 outdoor environments where most of the meat comes from the skies. But Portal 2 is almost entirely indoors, so the color and value of the world geometry is apparent in the water reflections. Since the Portal 2 world geometry is relatively simple, we automatically build a version of the world geometry that has a single texture that combines both lighting and surface shading, along with another texture that has just surface shading. The latter texture is used when rendering dynamic lights. These textures are the same spatial resolution as the light maps and get packed into a single large output texture per level. Drawing the simple world imposter takes very little CPU time, which with the limited resource on Portal 2 due to the many portal views, split screen views, and water reflection views that you need to render. We initially planned on using the world imposters only for water reflection rendering, but we ended up using it to improve the performance in split screen mode, where it's used for rendering distant portals and portals that are 2 levels deep. We also use the world imposters to render water in full screen co-op mode, to give us some performance overhead, since the co-op mode has more portal views to render than single-player mode.
Normally in games when players die, they see this as a big failure. But in Portal, death is a normal part of the puzzle-solving experience. In co-op, death not only happens more frequently, but it can happen at the hands of your partner, purely accidentally, of course. We felt it was important to not only make death no big deal, but to make it fun. Early on, we tried some elaborate death animations, such as showing your robot slowly getting crushed under a giant pressure. These were awesome to watch, but they quickly became repetitive. Also, after a very short while, players grew afraid to take risks. The fear of having to wait a long time before trying again prevented them from simply playing and experimenting in a spirit of fun. We had to find the right balance where death was enough to be a non-penalty, and elaborate enough to be visceral and satisfying, a fun payoff for creative play.
We noticed that after playtesters had solved this difficult puzzle together, they'd sometimes pause before funneling through the exit door to repeat jump up and down in excitement. We realized that these meeting places would be the perfect time to allow players to high-five each other and celebrate their victory in style. Our first interface attempt had one player initiate a high five by holding their hand up and waiting. The other player could join in by selecting the same gesture. If they were standing in the correct positions relative to each other, they'd pull off a high five. But learning the correct place to stand was too difficult, so we decided to automatically move the bots into the correct position for the high five. Sometimes, however, the player who wanted to high five would be left hanging as the other player ran ahead without accepting. Increasing the time that the initiator waited with his hand up gave the other player time to return and accept. But being frozen into place for more than a few seconds was too frustrating. So finally, we made players auto-accept the team gestures. Now when the mood strikes either player, the game always ensures a successful celebration.
Something that really surprised us was how often playtesters stated that they loved the basic experience of handing off the cube to their partner. Players didn't expect such a fundamental physical interaction to just work in a game. Before trying it for the first time, they would discuss their plan as if it were some unique or special new game mechanic. When it just worked, they were overjoyed.
Several puzzles in the game required the players to take on distinct, intertwined roles. We called these asymmetric chambers puzzles, because one player was often placing their life in the hands of the other. When one player accidentally kills the other, it almost always ends in laughter. So much laughter that we sometimes had to question if it really was a legitimate accident. These puzzles also require players to stay in constant communication, which naturally leads to some great moments of cooperative bonding. While some teams found these stressful, for many partners, these puzzles were their favorite type. But everyone agreed that they added much needed variety and a nice change of pace. And by swapping roles, each player can get an entirely different experience within the exact same puzzle.
Damn. What the? Go for it, shoot box.
Several puzzles in the game require the players to take on distinct, intertwined roles. We called these asymmetric chambers trust puzzles, because one player is often their life in the hands of the other.
What the hell?
When one player accidentally kills the other, it almost always ends in laughter. So much laughter that we sometimes had to...
Early on, we realized that trying to tell your partner where to go, where to look, or where to place the portal was going to be really hard. Even with voice chat, saying, over there, doesn't give enough information to your partner within the 3D space. Players kept wanting to get up and point directly at their partner's screen. We developed the ping tool to address this problem. Because the ping tool was so important, we decided to train players in its use before we did anything else. We held back on the vast majority of player actions and let the players focus entirely on the ping tool. This is why the co-op bots start separated in a tube, without even the ability to walk or shoot a portal.
Okay, this one's very weird because it doesn't work. Why doesn't that box go through? I do not know. Silly box. Oh. Come with me, stupid box. Bad box. See if this works. I'm gonna try this before. Whoa. Whoa, what the? Anyway, that's